Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football and welcome back to the Winning Drive. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Pleased to be joined by our own coach, former high school football coach at Bernie, Capel, Brownwood, Burton, Rotan. Also played college football at Abilene Christian, coach there as well, and was on the staff at the University of Texas for multiple head football coaches. And these days, you can catch his work at ShipleyRanches.com. It's our own coach, Bob Shipley. What's going on, Coach? How you doing?
Hey, doing good, man. Doing good. Just trying to stay out of this heat.
Oh, yeah, man. It's already triple digits in May. We talking about mid-May and it's triple digits. I don't even want to think about summertime, Coach. It's just gonna be brutal. It's gonna be brutal out there.
I know.
So hope everybody out there staying hydrated, trying to stay cool, find some shade. Thank you guys for taking the time to join us. We always appreciate that, no matter where you're joining us from. We thank you guys for joining us. We'll get into a lot of topics. There are some over-under win totals that have been thrown out there by, I believe, FanDuel and Circus Sports have thrown theirs out there. So we'll talk about where they have the Longhorns and their win totals for the 2025 season. We'll also get into the latest commitment for the Longhorns in the 2026 class, a very versatile, talented football player, period, on both sides of the ball, Germaine Bishop. I want to get Coach's thoughts. I've heard everybody else's thoughts about this young man, but I want to get Coach's perspective and viewpoint on it. So we'll get into that coming up a little bit later on. We'll talk about Arch Manning and the Manning family and why they value quarterback development so much. Another example of why the NFL is not a developmental league for quarterbacks, I think, has recently been brought up. So we'll talk about that coming up, kind of a macro topic for us. We'll also dive into some Aggie headlines about the Aggies and some of their spending. Severance spending is a term that's out there, so we'll talk about that too, and as it relates to the Longhorns and the Aggies. But of course, your questions, your comments, you throw them out there. You drive the winning drive in any direction you want to. Super chats jump to the front of the line. You can interrupt the show at any time. So please throw them out there. We'll try to address as many questions and comments as we can. All right, Coach. Before we start diving deep, and probably CJ is going to join us a little bit later on. He's on the road. All right, he's actually getting eyes on some of the top prospects in the country. A lot of the prospects the Longhorns are getting have their interest in. So we'll get his thoughts on who he's out there getting eyes on. I think yesterday was earlier this week, Hayward Howard Jr., the quarterback out of Louisiana. He was in Louisiana. I'm not sure if he's still in Louisiana, but we'll talk to CJ coming up a little bit later on. Also, Jerry Hamilton plans on doing a surprise drop-in. Usually I don't like drop-ins, but love when Jerry Hamilton drops in. And I'm not sure. I think Jerry's in Florida, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, CJ's in Louisiana or was in Louisiana, and Jerry's in Florida. So that's what I love about the On Texas Football family, man. It's not just guys, reading stuff online. Jerry and CJ, they get eyes on some of these guys and makes a big difference in your evaluation to get eyes on the recruits. Sometimes they're standing right next to the coaches who are also out there for their visits to the high school. So it's pretty cool. All right, Coach. Speaking of one of these guys that Texas had their eyes on and actually got a commitment from in the 2026 class, Germaine Bishop. I'm sure by now you got a chance to watch him. A lot of Longhorn fans very excited about this young man. And he has a lot of highlights. And, man, offense and defense, it's just spectacular. Just playmaker on both sides of the ball. The reports are Texas bringing him in to play defense. First question I got for you, where would you put this young man? Because he looks great on both sides now.
I like to stack that defense, but I'm kind of a wide receiver guy. And, I mean, hey, when he hurdled that guy on that – do you remember the highlight?
Ooh, I saw it.
The guy?
Yep.
I'm like, that's a different – I mean, could he – here's my question for you. Could he be our Travis Hunter?
Oh, see? Now
that's what – I mean, he is too elite of a talent on the offensive side of the ball to just have him play one side. But – I mean, his blocking, look at this. I mean, look at this. He gets two of them and then runs with him all the way to the end zone. I mean, the guy is phenomenal, and he's aggressive on defense. He's a good tackler. He's got a quick first step. He's got good eyes, good anticipation on defense. I think he's a guy that I don't know how you keep him off the field on either side of the ball. I'm being serious. I mean, I know you at the University of Texas, you get some of the best players in the country, but this guy is unlike anybody I've seen.
Yeah, I understand the cornerback thing. I get it. I mean, he's definitely got all the physical traits to be really, high
Look
level.
at that. Look at that.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one coach he was talking about.
I mean, that's Travis Hunter. My goodness.
Oh, leaped over, dude, and then burnt off on the defense. I'm with you. To me, I said it yesterday. I know Jalen Lott's another amazing athlete that Texas, has to make the decision on whether he's going to play offense or defense. You brought up Travis Hunter, who played both, and probably played both in a manner that unlike anything we've ever seen in modern times in football. And I don't know. I mean, and we've seen guys dabble in it, right? That's what Charles Woodson did, Champ Bailey. We've seen that before. We've seen guys, and I almost wonder if he should be a dabble guy. I almost wonder if, like, hey, man, yes, if he plays defense, then have a package for him on offense. And I felt like, listen, Jalen Lott is a great athlete too. I feel like Jalen Lott, I think is going to end up playing wide receiver because I think that's where his heart is. This young man, from what I'm told by CJ and those who've talked to him, he doesn't really have a preference. He'll play anywhere. And Texas is reportedly, leaning toward playing him on the defensive side of the ball. I think he has some offensive instincts you can't ignore.
And look at this. Look at this return. I mean, the only time this guy shouldn't be on the field is punt team. And he could probably go down and cover better than anybody because he's aggressive. He's aggressive. Well, look. I mean, this guy is, he's amazing. I don't know how you keep him off the field. Even as a freshman, he can contribute on both sides. And now, I don't, we're recruiting at probably the highest level for this stretch that in modern history Texas has ever recruited at. So to say that he can beat the 5-star guys that are playing straight defense or straight offense, I mean, there's got to be some select plays for him. At least, if you don't play him full time on offense, you got to have a package for him.
Yeah, no, like I said, I think he might be worthy of it. He just has some natural offensive traits and skills. It's hard. It'd be a pity to waste it. I think that's how you feel. But Texas is gonna play him on defense, and he's gonna be a ball hawk for him on the defense side of the ball. It does show you the types of players that they are, coach, starting to recruit on the defensive side of the ball. Guys with ball skills. Guys who attack the football and believe they have a right to it when the ball's in the air. He's another one of those guys. I mean, we've seen it, and earlier Hayward Howard's another one of those dudes. We just saw that in the 2026 class. I think Kate Phillips, one of those guys. I think there's a certain trait that they are recruiting in their DBs now, and they want guys that can make plays on the football, coach. Period.
Yeah. Well, he can certainly do that, and like I said, I don't know, even as a freshman, how you keep this guy off the field. I mean, it's not like he's playing against a bunch of slouches. Although I don't know how you leave a guy 2 or 3 plays like that uncovered. With some, they've got a good offensive scheme, and they're taking advantage of him in that scheme. But what he does out in the open field is just incredible. This kid is extra special in my mind.
Yeah. Now, like I said, it'll be fun to see exactly how. And he's a little lean, a little wiry, a little skinny. He actually kind of fits a prototype of a Sark type of wide receiver.
He's not scared to put his head in there defensively now. I'm telling you.
No, he's not
backing. He's not backing away. He's attack mode. Whether he's blocking, whether he's tackling, whether he's returning a kick, whether he's taking a ball, hurdling over defenders, whatever he does, he is the definition of a baller to me. Look at that.
It's pretty clear. He's going to definitely be a return guy. Like, he's definitely going to return kicks, punts and kickoff returns probably as well. But I'm with you, coach. I do wonder if he's going to play defense. Man, if he masters the defensive side of the ball, I think that's when you start thinking, hey, does he still have those elite traits on offense that we don't want to waste? I mean, and he does. Right now, he looks like it. One of those guys. So CJ is joining us now, CJ Vogel, who's on the road. CJ, where are you, first of all, before we start diving into things here? Where are you at this point?
Yeah, I'm in a McDonald's parking lot in the middle of New Orleans. So
are your doors locked?
I don't know, coach, but if someone wants to sneak me a McChicken, I understand, but we'll see. I'm right across the street from St. Augustine High School, and so I'll be stopping over there here in a minute. Texas offered 2 St. Augustine wide receivers yesterday. That was Chris Jackson, who stopped by here in New Orleans. He, of course, saw Jabari Mack in person in that spring game last night. He's actually up in Waxahachie High School right now, up in the DFW area. So, Coach, you know all about it. The recruiting trips for these college coaches, they never stop. But right now, I'm in between stops. Just saw, Rod, you'll like this, actually. How about a 6 foot, 190-pound wide receiver out of the Brother Martin High School out here in New Orleans? Easton Royal is his name. Just ran 10.3 flat at the in the Louisiana State track meet. Texas offered yesterday. Really great kid, big time future in football as well. So in between stops here, but when it comes, sit on the winning drive, talk to you guys, because I feel like I've been a little missing this week. So I'm ready to come sit in and see what's going on.
Nice. Okay, you said they offered 2. One of them was this Easton Royal. This young man. Who's the other receiver?
Yeah, the other one out of St. Augustine, there were 2. The first one is Miguel Whitley, a big-time wide receiver out of here in New Orleans. That's who I'm about to go see. He's at St. Augustine, 6 foot, 170 pounds, football return wide receiver, everything that goes into that game. Big-time catch radius, plays a lot bigger than what he shows as well. And the other one is Waquan Wright. Tough name for me right there, but again, 2 really talented St. Augustine wide receivers. And for folks who are aware of St. Augustine, Leonard Fournette, really talented running back out of the New Orleans area. There is no shortage of talent out here. I'll say that 100%.
Okay, man. And so are these receivers, though, do they fit the we've talked about how the receiver profile seems to be getting a little bit bigger. Seems guys are longer, kind of rangier athletes. Are these guys, do they kind of fit that mold as well?
Yeah, this one, Easton Royal, who I just saw, I think fits more of what, a little beefier Xavier Worthy, right? 10.3 is ridiculous, and this is a guy whose father was finished 3rd in the state 100-meter. His uncle actually won the state 100-meter. So speed runs in the family. Of course, he just finished 2nd. He said he stumbled towards the back end of his finish. So as a 16-year-old, 15-year-old sophomore in high school running 10.3 flat, yeah, the ceiling's pretty high. But the wiry frame is kind of built out more so for him, right? 190 pounds. He kind of looks like he's on a Deebo Samuel mold physically, but he's got that speed, which separates him, obviously. So that's what really was exciting about Easton Royal. Now, these other 2, I'm going in blind. Haven't watched a whole lot of them. Don't know much about them other than Texas offered yesterday evening. So we'll see what more I can kind of pick away from. But right now, I loved what I saw with Easton Royal.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are wondering. Coach and I were just talking about wide receiver, whether Germaine Bishop should be playing wide receiver. Coach wouldn't waste the wide receiver skill, the offensive skill. He's a little biased, of course. He does have a thing for wide receivers. But I don't know if I got your opinion one way or the other, if you thought he should be used as a wide receiver or a cornerback. We know he's got a really high upside no matter what side of the ball he's going to play. But what do you think? You've seen him up close and personal. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I might be in the minority here. I really like him as a corner. I really like the twitch. I think this is a guy that you just stick on the number 1 wide receiver for another team and just say, hey, you're tied to his hip, and I think he's very capable of doing that, right? We watched the huddle. We've talked about his athleticism. This is a guy who can change direction without skipping any sort of acceleration and do so very well. So, you can't lose with a kid like Germaine Bishop, right? You throw him on offense, you have a heck of a playmaker that's going to find the end zone time and time again, or you stick him at cornerback and you got a guy that, you could eventually have as your cornerback number 1. So this is a huge get, right? And y'all have done a great job of breaking that down. I'm just here to echo it again. And for Texas this year, to have a Germaine Bishop already in the fold, and for where they're sitting right now with a Jalen Lott, like you have 2 guys that you could theoretically put on either side of the ball and have a lot of success. So I think that ultimately this is a guy that I would stick in the field, just say, hey, your speed, your athleticism, just go cover. What's the saying, Rob? It's like 30% of land is covered by of Earth is covered by land, and the other 70% be covered by X cornerback, right? That would be Germaine Bishop for me. So I know I'm in the minority there, but he's a heck of a talent.
No, he is. No, I'm not saying. I agree he can be a success no matter what side of the ball he's on. But man, he is freaky and twitchy. His twitch is freaky. Like that, like you turn his change of direction, his ability to kind of stick it in the ground and really explode. It's something I haven't seen in a while. I heard maybe it was Jeff and Jerry that brought up Peter Warwick.
Yeah,
Coach, you remember Peter Warwick?
You bet.
So he's got some Peter Warwick, and I was like, that's scary. Peter Warwick was a fourth overall pick, I believe, and I don't disagree with that comparison. I threw out my comparisons when I looked at him as a DB. The comparison I wrote up was Asante Samuel, actually.
Oh, that was your draft class, wasn't it?
Yeah, as a DB, just because a guy who can just be sticky in coverage, sticky, and wasn't just an overall athlete that ended up playing cornerback, and such a great athlete that it really didn't matter if you put him at cornerback or you put him at something else. They were probably going to end up being a really good football player. And that's what everybody sees with Germaine Bishop. It really doesn't matter where you put him. It's kind of what you need. What do you need? And like you said, CJ, he didn't have a preference either. Like it'd be different. Like Jalen Lott, you said, had a preference. Like, hey, I want to play offense. That's what my heart is. This young man's heart just playing ball.
For the argument of playing wide receiver, there's a tweet from Zach Poff from Max Preps. Going back to the 23 season when he and DJ Lagway, the current Florida quarterback, were in the playoffs together. How about these stats? So Willis defeated Tomball Memorial 42-21. DJ Lagway threw for 462, accounted for 6 touchdowns. Jermaine Bishop had 9 receptions, 294 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So that's a playoff game as a sophomore. So that speaks to the level of talent, the production, obviously. And again, you can't go wrong. For me, and Rod, maybe I'll get your opinion on this, because you get the twitch, you get the ball skills as a cornerback in my eyes. I don't know if you find that easier in the wild versus what you could get from him offensively in the wild. So that's kind of where I lean, is what position or what side of the ball could he be a more valuable asset at, more rather than maybe what's his overall highest ceiling on either side of the ball. I don't know.
No, I got you. I agree with that, because you don't get skills like that playing DB.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm not trying to diss DBs. DBs are great athletes, but oftentimes the DBs are the ones without those elite ball skills, without the elite tracking ability. You know what I mean? They don't have a lot of DBs have twitch, so that's something that DBs have in common. But the elite ball skills and the instincts that he has in terms of diagnosing angles to the football, and he's just like I said, there's some guys. The ball finds them, man. I knew these. I played with these guys. I played with Nathan Basher. I played with Michael Huff, coach, and there are certain guys. They think ball. They think ball. They play ball. Like that's just the way they operate. That's the way they're programmed. And this young man will be like that on that side of the ball. He will make plays on the football, the DB position, and that was what was lacking in my game. I made plays on the ball, but I wasn't a ball hawk like this young man and like Nathan Basher. This guy can end up being, he won't be here long enough if he's successful, but he's the kind of guy that'll end up, challenging the interception record in a season if he's a starter. Like, he's that good in terms of the ball skills he has.
Yeah, super talented.
There's no doubt he is, but I mean, I agree with CJ. CJ, you didn't hear my opening comments on him. I thought, he's a no-brainer for defense, but his ball skills are so good. You got to at least have a package for him, unless you're just so loaded. Hey, after watching this guy, if we're so loaded at receivers, if this guy can't help us, then you better watch out, because the Horns are going to win it all. I'm telling you.
Even if you're all loaded, though, I don't mind a little package here and there. So what if you're trying to, win the guys some, national award or something? It always helps. It always helps to have another freaky athlete out there, man. Nothing wrong with having another unique, freaky athlete out there like him. So.
I'm just saying, if you take just look at his offensive highlights only. I mean, he's how many guys in the 26 class can you say are better than him offensively?
Yeah,
that's
a fair argument. Yeah, because I think that's part of it too. Is you kind of enthralled with the idea of the athlete. And you say, oh yeah, either side. If you just look at it, one side of the ball versus the other, how does he stack up against some of the top targets on the board? If you put him next to a Tristan Keys, a Jalen Lott, some of these major national prospects. Coach, I think you're right. Like, he would be in that conversation, which if he is in that conversation, and we believe that he is, right, it's hard to just say no. Yeah, we're going to use you on the other side, where he's still going to be good, but to just kind of not use, half of his game, I think, in a way, would be a disservice to him.
No, it's good conversation. We failed to mention it. CB brought it up that he is related to Michael Bishop. And shout out to Alfio Randall, Big Cat, who came in with me in 1999, who actually was hanging out with Michael Bishop when the announcement came or when the commitment came down. So he's good friends with Michael Bishop, and I'm not sure if it's a cousins thing. I'm not sure what it is, how they're kinfolk, but they are related. So he's got some good genes. No doubt about that. All right, CJ, how about this one from Arrow Kids? He says, CJ, hand grenades or hurricanes last night? We need to know. Yeah,
I actually had myself a nice little dinner out here in New Orleans. So watched the end of the Oilers and Knights hockey game. Not much scoring there, but very calm night for what you would think a New Orleans evening would be. Kind of bracing for what's about to be an 8.5-hour drive back to Austin right now. So
there you go. See, CJ being responsible. That's how you know CJ, he's getting older. He started to think about the drive back and the consequences and all that kind of stuff. That's CJ's growing up before our very eyes. It's good to see.
I didn't even go to the casino. Look at that.
Exactly. He thought about it, and unless he thought about it, he was like, "Nah."
Those lights were bright. I'll tell you.
Bevo's bodyguard wants to know what's the status on turn time. CJ sent you out about what's the latest status on turn time.
Yeah, that's a great name, by the way. John Turntine, down to about 4 schools: Ohio State, Michigan, Texas, and Texas A&M. Right now, I have a hard time seeing him go outside of state. I think it'll come down to Texas A&M and Texas. He's been to both schools about 6, 7, 8 times. I mean, he's been to both schools a ton. So that's where I think he's most familiar. I think staying close to home is very important for him. Texas, having lost out on Michael Fasusi a year ago, I think is going to be an underlying factor in terms of how hard they push this year as well. But ultimately, I think he likes what Texas is doing, right? The production of guys into the NFL, the development of guys sticking within the system and now earning their starting spots, right? He's talked to a Trevor Gooseby. He's talked to a DJ Campbell, guys from the DFW area who he's seen grow up over the last 2, 3, 4 years as Longhorns. So that plays a big role. He's got a great relationship with Kyle Flood, great relationship with Steve Sarkisian, got to sit down with both on his previous visit to Austin. A July 4th visit is a possibility. So we talk about fireworks. That would be a big one. And I would give Texas probably a 60-40 lead right now over Texas A&M.
Nice.
And that's, of course, completely separate of what Felix Ojo could do as well. But that name got me thinking a little bit there. Bevo's bodyguards. I was talking to Hayward Howard last night, Junior, the Texas cornerback commit after his spring game. I said, what was one of your favorite parts of going down to Texas for the first time in April? And he goes, oh, man, I got to meet the bull, Bevo. I'm like, he goes, man, I was scared. I was like, he goes, we don't have cows out here in Louisiana. I was like, yeah, but you got alligators. He goes, I don't do animals. So I was cracking up, man. It was funny. He said that was one of the cooler takeaways that he had was getting to meet Bevo, go out on the field, see everything, and obviously committed to Texas. But Bevo's bodyguard, the name certainly
that's good.
Sparked that interest or that comment there. It's funny.
That's good.
Yeah, well, Bevo's bodyguard evidently was not present in the 2018 Sugar Bowl when we beat Georgia. That little bulldog. Bevo's bodyguard said, "Go sick him."
The late Ugger, right? That was that's
right.
Crazy, that. Oh yeah, that was Hey, you know what? Bevo was ready. I think that was an omen that everybody needed. Everybody was a little bit, they're a little bit anxious going into that game. Longhorn fans didn't know what to expect. And then Bevo did that. Longhorn fans were like, you know what?
It's on now. Yeah.
Bevo's in a mood. Okay, I like that. And turns out it was a good omen. Bevo was ready to go.
Paid off.
Yeah, that's funny. But no, first of all, there are cows in Louisiana, all right? I got family out there in Louisiana. And yeah, there are cows in Louisiana, but not as many as there are in Texas, so I get that. All right, let's thank our first sponsor before we move on here. Our friends over at Flat Creek Estate Winery. Did you know the most awarded wine in Texas is actually the vineyard closest to Austin? That's right, folks. Flat Creek Estate Winery is just minutes from downtown Austin, and they've won award after award this year for their vintage wine. That's Super Texan now available at your local Specs. They also have a display at your local Central Market, I saw as well. And of course, our friends over at Flat Creek, not only producing some of the best wines on the market. Yes, the Super Texan is the award winner, but they have a lot of great wines. The Rosé is really good. The Pinot Grigio is great. It's really refreshing as well. My wife's a big fan of Flat Creek Estate wines, and you will be as well. But Flat Creek, not only producing some of the best wines that you'll ever taste, but it's also a gorgeous venue with barbecues and wine tastings every single weekend. Perfect for a day date with your significant other or a weekend getaway with your significant other. That is Flat Creek Estate Winery. Check them out at flatcreekestate.com. And really appreciate them for being a part of the On Texas football family and sponsoring the winning drive here. All right. How about this? A question before we dive into another topic. If OU has a bad year and changes coaches again, are they entering the dark ages?
Yes.
My thing was this is why it kind of reminds me. There is some similarities, guys, when Texas embarked on their offensive identity crisis and they couldn't figure out who they wanted to be offensively. Right, it started right after they kind of fired Greg Davis, and then from then on, Texas really just couldn't figure it out. They kept changing offensive identity, different offensive coordinator, different offensive mindset. Mac decided to call a shot. They were going to be a power running game after losing to Bama. You remember all that, Coach. I'm sure you remember it better than I do. And then when Sark come around, you finally got your offensive identity. And I think Tom Herman actually kind of had an identity formed as well, at least somewhat of an identity. I think that's what OU's kind of going through right now. I don't know if they have an offensive identity, and it's an identity crisis now. If they end up changing again, like I said, then it'll confirm it. And that's ultimately what started the spiral for Texas. It was that, along with not being able to figure out, who your quarterback was, that Shakespearean irony of being in the quarterback mecca in the state of Texas and not being able to find your quarterback as the flagship university and program in Texas. That ultimately was part of the downward spiral. And like I said, I don't know if Oklahoma is there yet, but I do see signs of it ultimately.
Well, and also, obviously, Texas was not during those years. Texas was not recruiting at the same level Oklahoma was recruiting. Oklahoma was getting the kids that Texas is getting now, and once that momentum starts downhill like that, it's hard to stop it. How do you stop it? You got to get a Vince Young. You got to get an Arch Manning. You've got to lure somebody in that's going to help you recruit on the national scene and at a national elite level. And Oklahoma just can't do that right now. I mean, they just don't offer a lot, especially a defensive head coach. I'm not saying that you can't be a successful head coach and have a defensive background, but the identity of most football teams, is their offense. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. And people want to play an exciting offense. And when you get that big name guy and you start having a little bit of success, then you'll see the momentum start shifting back in OU's. Everything goes full circle. And there was a time I thought we were never going to get back to that level of OU, but we have surpassed that level. In fact, as I said earlier, I think we're recruiting at the highest level that we've ever recruited in the history of modern football.
Yeah, I'm with you. The thing that's working in Oklahoma's favor here, having this offensive identity crisis, is the portal exists, right?
Yeah.
When we look at what have been the best offenses under Brent Venables, it's when they paired up, Dylan Gabriel with Jeff Lebby, two guys that were familiar with one another. Right? They were in each other's systems at UCF, transferred over to Oklahoma after a year, and Dylan Gabriel, we all know, was pretty solid for Oklahoma. Goes to Oregon, pretty solid for them. So talented quarterbacks in a system already with that familiarity, it kind of sparks what was a dead offense. Now, Oklahoma's offense last year, I think, was beyond dead, right? It was an abysmal offense, probably the worst offense for Oklahoma I've ever seen in my life. And that's saying something, right? Because they've always had great offenses. So could this be the year that they get back to normal? Well, I think they're kind of taking a page out of 2023 saying, hey, why don't we go get a quarterback? And why don't we go get an offensive coordinator to implement their own system? They're familiar with one another, right? We talk about Ben Arbuckle coming over from Washington State, John Mateer coming with him. Now you're kind of kickstarting that revitalization of the offense. And I'm not to say that this is going to be the offense that rivaled that of a Lincoln Riley, Baker, Kyler, Jalen Hurts, but I do think it's going to be a better offense. Now, for me, the bigger piece of this is, all right, you're Brent Venables, your back's against the wall. You've retaken defensive play calling duties. How do you mesh? Because he's always wanted to go fast on offense. You look at who he's hired to be his offensive coordinator. Well, that doesn't work when you're defensive minded. You got to have an offense that gets up there, chews some clock, has 4 to 7 minute possessions, narrows the game down, and just scores 3-4 times. Because you know that your defense, given what caliber of a defensive coordinator that Venables is and the talent that they have defensively, won't allow touchdowns 3 to 4 to 5 times per game. So I've always disagreed with the way that he's gone about his offensive coordinator philosophy. But I do think that they'll right the ship enough this year to be competitive in the SEC. Will they win? Probably not. Probably not the SEC title, but will it save his job ultimately is the question. I think for this year, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I was Matthew, you might have this transfer portal rankings, I believe, at ESPN. I think it was Max Olson actually that did them, and I believe John Mateer, the quarterback you're referring to, CJ, he was the number 1 ranked player in their transfer portal rankings of players who had gone into the portal and been acquired by another program. And so I don't think we're giving enough credit to thank you very much, Matthew. He was the number 1 guy, period. Number 1 player acquired in the program. I think Jaden Ott, their running back they got, I think he was 17, if I'm not mistaken. Pretty good player. Remember last year he was hurt, but the year before that had a really, really spectacular season. I don't think what Longhorn fans, because I've watched film on him, what they definitely are going to be maybe surprised by is his mobility, his ability to run. John Mateer. You can see even there it says he had 58 forced missed tackles, most among FBS quarterbacks. So forcing that's a crazy number for a QB. That's more than just functional mobility. That's a guy that can actually run, and he's in a system that he's familiar with. He's gonna be comfortable, and I agree with CJ. I'm not saying they're gonna be what Dylan Gabriel was when he was there, but I do think it'll be way more explosive, way more efficient, and way more effective overall. And I think Venables always gonna put a good defensive product out there. I just think he's just a really good defensive mind. So I expect him to be competitive. But there you go. Thank you, Matthew. John Mateer, I think Longhorn fans are. Texas is going to beat Oklahoma. I think Texas is better than Oklahoma. So I'm not trying to start some paranoia, but I think we're sleeping on how good John Mateer is. Period.
They'll score a touchdown this year.
Just one? That's going to be one? I don't know who the wide receivers are the question, really. John Mateer is going to be legit. And maybe the O-line. The O-line, the wide receiver. I think John Mateer, and I think the running game will be better, but just because they have a dual threat quarterback that can run now and boost the running game and juice it. But O-line and wide receiver are still uncertainties, in my opinion, and those are big uncertainties going in. But the quarterback position, compared to last year, it's going to be night and day. It ain't going to be close.
Yeah, 100%. The other thing I'm really interested to see is you go look at where Oklahoma brought in a lot of its portal talent from this year. You know, it's a lot of lower-level schools. And I'm not to say that they can't compete in the SEC, but it's interesting, right? Because you see Texas's players that depart end up at pretty good schools. Rod, you say it all the time. You want your exes to do well because that makes you do well.
Yep.
Well, you don't want to stoop, right? And it's interesting the way that Oklahoma's attacked the portal this year, because it's not been a power 4 to power 4 transition for a lot of these guys, right? John Mateer, Jay Knott being two of really the only two that have come from power 4 conferences. So will that step be too big in year one? Can they kind of bridge the gap with some makeshift pieces from like a Western Carolina, from an Eastern Illinois? You know, they got a lot of guys making that big time jump. Is that stage too bright? Lights too big? Whatever. I don't know. But it's certainly interesting because it's hard to kind of project how these guys will transition into the SEC because you just don't know what other competition that they faced before.
Yep. That's kind of what Kobe says. He says Mateer is going to crap his pants in the Red River rivalry game. He's never been in on an atmosphere like that. And it's like, that's true. That is a unique atmosphere. I've heard guys like Dan Neal compare it to the Super Bowl, right? So but who knows? He might thrive in that atmosphere. We don't know. Dylan Gabriel was a dude in that atmosphere.
Yeah,
Coach.
that's right. That's right. It just depends on we'll see what he's made of in that game.
Yep.
Yeah.
If he folds his tent or if he rises to the occasion. That game will tell us everything about him, I think.
Yep.
Oklahoma has Michigan very early in the year too, I believe.
Oh yeah, on that schedule, Oklahoma Mateer better be legit because that schedule, man, he can still be good and they can still end up a 500 team. Like that's a tough schedule that Oklahoma has too. But I think Oklahoma will be better, and I think Venables will have the defense right. I think he's going to give the offense over to Ben Arbuckle, focus entirely on defense. So I know the defense. I think it'll be a good product offensively. We'll see what the synergy of Ben Arbuckle and John Mateer is like in the Big 12. In the SEC. But Trojan Fight says, "Oh, you better hope that Wyoming game Mateer doesn't show up much." Hey, remember, I know a Longhorn quarterback that had a off game versus Wyoming too. All right. Y'all remember that? Yeah. Don't act like y'all don't remember that. Okay. It happens.
Bro, that was a game I was leaving DKR saying, thank God for Longhorn Network because the rest of the country couldn't see this.
Yeah, I remember that game. I remember the post game after that game. Y'all wasn't happy. So hey, don't be disrespecting Wyoming like that. All right, let's thank our friends over at Von Lane before we continue with our live stream. Thank you very much to Von Lane and all their support of Owen Texas football. Really appreciate them. And folks, trust me, if you're traveling to you're traveling to Houston or Dallas or Austin or San Antonio, traveling to any of the major Texas cities, the only way to travel is with our friends over at Von Lane. Now, you know it's a bit of a toss-up. If you try to drive, you got to deal with the road rage. You got to deal with the traffic. You got to deal with burning an entire day of productivity just driving in between the cities. If you try to take a flight, well, we know how that goes. You got delays. You got the ridiculously overpriced items in an airport. Nobody wants to deal with that. The stress levels they'll thank you later for arriving at Von Lane, folks. Von Lane, you arrive at a luxury hotel terminal, no TSA lines, no long-term parking lots, just a seamless boarding experience that takes minutes, not hours. You settle into a plush leather seat, a hot towel and pillow and blanket are at arm's reach. Your attendant offers complimentary snacks and beverages on select trips. You even have a full meal if you'd like it. And if you need to relax, you can lean back and enjoy the ride. If you want to stay productive, you can enjoy a complimentary high-speed Wi-Fi and power at every seat. And if you're unplugging or if you're powering through, the Von Lane team is monitoring traffic in real time using smarter routes and efficient detours to keep your trip smooth and on schedule. And now it's the perfect time to plan your fall travel with Von Lane. Booking is open through September. So whether you're headed to a college football game, a weekend getaway, business trip that needs to be done right, Von Lane makes the journey part of the reward. Von Lane serves Austin, Dallas, Houston, Fort Worth, San Antonio, and in the Southeast, Atlanta, Nashville, and Memphis. So visit vonlane.com. That's VONLANE.com and use the code OTF25 to save $20 off your first ride with our friends at Von Lane. That's Von Lane, elevated regional bus transportation at vonlane.com. Thank you very much to Von Lane for sponsoring the winning drive. Hoosier Horns here says, I think OU transfers will be similar to the jump Javion Cole tried to take. Yeah, I mean, Javion Cole, I thought he maybe could have more of an impact, but the secondary was a lot. I mean, it was so much better than anybody thought. The leap in improvement. And the secondary ended up being a strength. and it ended up being so deep, in fact, that's why I think they felt they had to use that dime package, because they had to put their best DBs out there. Gavin Holmes played well. He played better than we thought. Of course, we know Jay Barron and those guys. So I think ultimately, because the secondary ended up being arguably the best in the country, you can make that argument. There was just no room for, just a contributor like Javion Cole. And I did the air quotes. I don't know why that was disrespectful to Javion Cole. But my point is, he would have just been a contributor. He wouldn't have been. There was game changers in there. Taps and All-American. Makuba, gets drafted to the Eagles in the second round. You got Janae Barron wins the Thor. I mean, Malik Muhammad is, a multi-year returning starter. And I think Pro Football Focus had him as the number 6 corner. I don't think there was any room for somebody to just come in to just be a solid contributor. Everybody who was out there was playing pretty much a stellar role. And when they put a guy like Gavin Holmes out there, even he shined in the few reps that he had. I just don't think there was no room. There was no path to play for him.
Yeah. And I think that's the word to use, right? Is contribute, right? You get a guy from a level like San Jose State and you say, okay, how can you contribute? If you do contribute, that's great, because more times than not, you're likely coming in as a depth piece, unless you just have a record-breaking year at the previous stop. And in the sense for Oklahoma, I was looking at, where some of these guys are coming in from. Arkansas Pine Bluff, 1,200 yards. Southern Illinois, 800 yards. Western Carolina, you get offensive linemen from out there. Kennesaw State, a tight end, 300 career yards. Are these guys that they're expecting to start right away at wide receiver? I don't necessarily think that jump means a whole lot, right? You're either really good in your routes or you're not. You either got great hands or you don't. But some of these other positions, I think it does matter, right? Kennesaw State offensive linemen probably aren't going against a Josiah Sharma, a Justice Terry, Alex January, and then an All-American Murad Watson, right? So I think that's where you see the biggest jump is in the trenches. And Oklahoma right now with that offensive line from a year ago, it wasn't great last year. It's probably one of the worst that we've seen under Bill Bedenbaugh. They need to patch that up, and I think they have in terms of bodies, but in terms of cohesiveness, that remains a big question for me.
Yeah. I would say a mobile quarterback can help, depending on how you want to use them. Moving the pocket a little bit, moving around, having escapability and sack avoidance can help some of that. But you're right. If you got a bad offensive line, there's only so much you can do to help that. So to who's your Horns point, and the point that, CJ just brought up, I'm not sure if they brought him in and for what role they wanted him to play. If they brought him in to be starters and be impact players from that level, then that might be a problem. But for Texas, getting to your comparison to Javion Cole, Texas didn't need Javion Cole to be an impact player. They had so many guys ahead of him that were performing at a high level. I'm not sure that's the case with the Oklahoma, offensively, especially on that side of the ball. But I do like the Jaden Ott. I like that Jaden Ott pickup. I think Jaden Ott's a good player. All right, thank you, Hoosier Horn. We appreciate that. Colby once says, forgive me if you already have talked about him, but what about Felix Ojo? Are we in the driver's seat to land him? I think you did bring up Ojo a little bit, but I don't know if you talked about him specifically. But what are Texas' chances with Felix Ojo?
Yeah, Texas right there. I mentioned, Turntine and Ojo. I don't believe that, one's decision impacts the other all that much. But I do think Texas is very much in a position to land both. Ojo, very much the same kind of schedule, Ohio State, Michigan, Oklahoma, instead of Texas A&M. A&M is no longer a big factor in that recruitment for Ojo, but the Longhorns are. So Texas, I thought the big quote from Ojo whenever I went over and saw him last Friday was, they're treating me like the franchise player. And that normally tells you a little bit, because I think that's something that you trickle down. You don't normally come up with a sentence like that unless you hear it.
You heard it.
And so I kind of think Texas has that approach to him, saying, hey, you're our guy. You're our franchise guy this year. I can't confirm whether or not that's been said by Texas or not, but that's kind of where my thinking goes, having followed recruiting for a little bit now. So
I like that.
I do think Texas is in a good spot for him. He's been to Colorado, Texas Tech, Ole Miss as well. I don't think that they'll be big factors unless one of those schools just throws out an offer that you can't refuse. So, again, a Texas-Ohio State battle is kind of where I peg this one to become a decision later on towards August.
That's a good line, any coach? You're my franchise guy. It's a good
Oh,
line.
no doubt. Hey, man, and Felix, he's the cat, man. You remember Felix the cat?
Oh, yeah. See, I don't know if the young bucks will get the reference. I do.
He's our cat, man. That dude needs to be a Longhorn.
I like that. Felix the cat. He's our cat, man. But that's a good line on the franchise. I'm with you, though. See, that's a good.
There we go.
That's
That's
it. Matthews
Felix the cat, baby.
Boom. There you go. Fun Matthews, the best of the business. I like your thinking, though, CJ, about the franchise term. That one of the coaches probably dropped that on him. I like that. All right. I want to get you guys' thoughts about, we got some win totals. And I believe there are two separate ones, Matthew, if you could please pull up either one. I think FanDuel has them and Circa Sports. Brett McMurphy put out Circa Sports one. I believe they're the same, though. I believe they're basically the same. You can put out the Brett McMurphy Circa Sports one if you like, Matthew. But either way, I believe the top three teams in the SEC win totals here. They have them out for every conference. But thank you, Matthew. They have as the top three teams in the SEC, Circa Sports, 9.5 wins for over-under for Bama, Georgia, and Texas. We can see Oklahoma down there at 7. A&M, they got it 8 here. So I'll just ask you guys a simple question. All right, if you could make a bet, give me one for sure over that you take. Give me one for sure under that you take on this list. One you're like, oh, damn, that team's definitely going to be under. And one pick where, oh, this team's definitely going to be over.
I like this.
Coach, you want to go first? Or CJ, you can go first, whatever. Whoever's feeling it.
Yeah, I think I mean, I'm very biased, but I say Texas with you over on that.
Okay.
And, for sure. And I just don't know how you don't win. I mean, it's certainly possible. That's a really tough number. 9.5 is tough, but I think we at least have 10 in us, and hoping for more than that. The under, that's a tough one. But I'm going to go with my Aggies.
You just want to take a shot at the Aggies, Coach. Come on.
I mean, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but go ahead, CJ. Go ahead.
Yeah, Coach, to build off of you, I like Texas over 9.5. If you look at it from this perspective, do you think Texas wins 2 of these 4 games? Oklahoma, Florida on the road, Georgia on the road, Ohio State on the road. They win two of those games. In my eyes, they're hitting that 10-win mark because you got Arkansas at home, you got A&M at home, and I don't think of Kentucky, I don't think of Vanderbilt, I don't think of Mississippi State are going to be teams that push Texas with the talent that they have. So that's ultimately what it comes down to. Those 4 games, you split them, you go 2-2, you're over the mark. You're a 10-win team. You're back in the college football playoff. One other team that I really like the over of, and it's Billy Napier, man. He's a cockroach. He's never going away. You know, last year was supposed to be the most difficult season in college football history, and they kind of righted the ship, right? They kind of made it to land doing all right. Now, year 2 of DJ Lagway, sign me up. I'm a big Lagway believer now. I liked what I saw last year. I think that they're going to be a really tough team. And, Rod, I told you last week, I was kind of workshopping the take of what game might be tougher for Texas, on the road at Georgia, on the road at Florida. I kind of think that Florida game might be a little bit tougher for Texas.
Whoa.
And that's crazy considering what Georgia has talent-wise on its roster, but they have a game-changing quarterback at Florida, and they just simply don't have that at Georgia. So I think playing on the road, that quarterback is going to be a big difference maker. Now, if that game's at night in between the hedges, hey, Texas might be scoring about 6 points again. So we'll see. But I think that Florida game is going to be really, really tough this year for Texas.
Man, that's a hot take right there. That's a nice hot take right there, CJ. Well done. That is. I haven't heard one that good. And you could be right because DJ, they play different. When I saw last year, we all saw. You watched Florida a little bit. They play different when DJ Lagway is healthy. They play inspired. They play like a whole different team when he's healthy. And he's got that kind of upside, man. That's interesting. I think I will take Florida over too. I'll take Texas over. There's no doubt. That's easy. And Texas is going to be a 10-win team next year, at least. I think the losses are at Ohio State and possibly Georgia. But now CJ's got me thinking that Florida game, they're going to have 2 losses. It's going to be Florida or Georgia. Oh, the Ohio State one too.
Yeah.
It's hard to pick Texas in the Ohio State game. I actually am leaning toward picking Texas, though, because that's an opener, non-conference game, that big non-conference game for Texas. And Sark has shown that he does have the guys ready, and his game plans and preparation are for those big games, Bama and Michigan. So I'm actually leaning Texas. So I'm having a hard time finding that other loss in there too. And I don't want to be cocky and start saying Texas is going to be, undefeated, that kind of stuff. They're going to have a couple of losses. They're just too young, right? And it's the SEC. But I'm a coach. I got 10 wins. I feel good about 10 wins. Like I feel,
especially if you count in a conference championship and playoffs. Of course, that's just talking about regular season, but yeah, I'm with you, and I certainly agree with Florida. That's a maybe as good or better of an over pick than Texas.
Yeah. Matthew, can you pull up the Texas schedule real quick? Because I think that if I remember correctly, obviously, first week of the season is Ohio State. You get all the offseason of prep. But I think you go into Georgia off of a bye, and I think you go into Gainesville off of a bye. So, we talk about, how much this staff puts into preparation for big games when they have a week off or 2 weeks off or whatever. I think that's the case, right? There's Ohio State up at the top. You play, September. You go to Florida October 4th. That's after a bye after Sam Houston. And then Georgia at the end. You get a bye November 8th after playing Vanderbilt. So you get to play Vanderbilt at home, stay home, rest at home, and then go hit Georgia. Those 2 games, really 3, coming off of a bye, well rested. That's going to be huge for Texas.
That's a great point, CJ, because basically your biggest games, you got extra time to prepare for all your biggest games. Ohio State, of course, coming from the offseason. You just brought up that Florida game from right after Sam Houston and then the Georgia game. That's a great point. That should be a significant advantage, Coach. That should be a big advantage for Texas, man. I mean, you talk about whether you're talking about rest or whether you're talking about preparation. I mean, does that make you feel even better about those games, Coach? Now that
no doubt. And especially you got Sam Houston before Florida. And then you've got Vanderbilt before Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that. You probably just as importantly as anything is just letting guys get healed up,
right?
That have those nagging injuries, and you're not going to have to play your best players the entire game. Obviously against Sam Houston, you don't have to play them an entire game against Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
And you can also install your stuff. Go ahead and start installing your stuff for the Florida game, for the Georgia game, but you don't have to show it. You can stay with your base vanilla package and not have any problem with those games, offensively or defensively. Don't give those teams any more looks at maybe what you have up your sleeve. So I think it's if you've got to play at Florida and you got to play at Georgia and Ohio State, you can't ask for a better setup.
Yeah, I agree with that, Coach. Good point. Because how coaches are. They're especially with Sam Houston. I mean, they pretty much you go as vanilla as you can treat that one like a spring game, if you will, and have 2 weeks of real preparation install for that Florida game. And hell, depending on how good UTEP is, who knows? We may get 2 weeks of it in. That's a good point there. Good stuff there, CJ. All right, let's
real quick. I'm gonna have to say goodbye real quick.
Yeah,
I'm headed off to go see St. Aug practice again. 2 2027 wide receivers offered yesterday. We'll have notes over at ontexasfootball.com. And, of course, Jerry and I will have a nice little recap of where we've been on the road this weekend on Saturday morning. So, but, hey, it's not 107 out here, Rod, like it is out in Austin. I'm excited for that. But it is nice and toasty, a little humid down here in New Orleans. So, but thank you guys for letting me hop in as quickly as I have been today. So, I wanted to say that before I get out of here.
Hey, CJ, I always appreciate the insight, brother. Please be safe on that road, all right? Take your time, brother.
And be safe. And be safe in
my McDonald's.
NOLA. Right, that's right.
Alex.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. And Matthew, thank you.
Thank you, brother. All right, CJ out and about. We appreciate CJ and wishing him well, and hope he's being safe on the road. Let's thank. Speaking of the roads, you might need a new car to get on the roads. Well, our friends over at South Point Dodge, they might be the place that can help you out. SouthPointDodge.com. Texas football fans, you can score an easy extra point this season when you get to the point with our friends over at South Point Dodge. South Point Dodge has over 600 vehicles in stock right now, including the all-new 2025 Jeep Wrangler. You can get the real deal today and drive away in the Jeep Wrangler, a vehicle built for adventure. Plus, you can get employee incentive pricing. That's right, folks. You pay what the employees pay. Now, that's the real deal over at South Point Dodge. Doesn't matter if you need a car or a truck or something new or something used, or maybe you want to trade in whatever you need. South Point Dodge is Austin's automotive everything. You can go see their inventory in person for yourself off of I-35 in South Austin, or you can go visit them at southpointdodge.com and see their inventory online there as well. So we appreciate them, and you will as well. Especially, you'll appreciate the employee incentive pricing. It's a fancy way of saying you get the employee discount over at South Point Dodge. Nothing better than that. You pay what the employees pay. That's southpointdodge.com. Really appreciate them and all their support of on Texas football and their support of the winning drive. We appreciate them. All right, that's southpointdodge.com. All right, got a couple other items that I wanted to bring up here. Really quickly, before we get out of here, Matthew, if you could bring up the Pro Football Focus list of undrafted free agents who they believe are going to have the biggest impacts. There are a couple of Longhorns who went in as undrafted free agents into the league who are actually listed here. And some guys that we brought up when we did our draft analysis of Longhorns who had a really good shot, potentially at making a team, making a roster, or even getting into a training camp or making a practice squad. And one of the guys I brought up was Jake Majors. And I said, Jake Majors is in a really, really good spot there with Tampa. And because they listed, they didn't have a backup center listed with Tampa. And turns out Pro Football Focus agrees because they had Jake Majors, thank you very much, Matthew, as one of the undrafted free agents likely to make an impact. Talking about here that, and I love this stat, he was the only Power 5 center to play 750 or more pass blocking snaps over the past 2 seasons and not allow any sacks. I was actually a little surprised that he wasn't drafted, but they don't prioritize centers. Centers are not a premium position in the NFL. I don't even know why the NFL doesn't prioritize centers. You would think that it would be one of those positions that's considered premium that you can't live without, and you would have an insurance policy behind your starting center, but not necessarily the case. And so Jake Majors, I think, has a really good shot to make that team with the Tampa Bay Bucks. So the backup role is fully in the cards for Majors, who logged 3,700 snaps in his college career. It says Graham Barton, who the Bucks drafted in the first round last year, is locked in as a starting center, like he's their franchise center. But you got to have a backup for every position, and they literally don't even have a backup, like I said, listed. They didn't even have one listed when I did my draft breakdown. So really good sign for Jake Majors. Another Longhorn that they had listed as a possible impact player as an undrafted free agent was David Benda. Right below. Thank you very much, Matthew, for the Tennessee Titans. And I think David Benda's I think practice squad would be more likely than making the actual roster. I think Jake Majors can make the actual game day roster. I believe David Benda's probably more of a practice squad guy. But if he ends up as some team's developmental project, I think David Benda might have a really good shot in a couple of years at actually making a squad. But I see practice squad for David Benda. But for him to already be seen as one of the undrafted free agents who could be an impact player, it's a good sign for him. I'm a big fan of David Benda. Got a chance to interview him for Third and Longhorn. I know a couple of teams that were looking at him as a priority free agent. I'm glad he ended up with Tennessee because I think they don't necessarily they haven't started building that defense now. Remember, they had already built their defense with the previous regime. And now they're post Vrabel. They're changing the offensive identity. They're focusing on that first. Got Cam Ward, got their franchise quarterback. The coach is an offensive-minded coach. I think they're going to focus on the defensive side of the ball after that. And honestly, Bender might be one of those pieces that they can build around for the future. So two undrafted free agents who actually may have a shot at making the roster. Coach Shipley is back with us. What's going on?
Sorry about that. I want to say this about Bender. I was part of his recruitment coming to the University of Texas out of Seco Ranch. And he's a guy that everybody discounts. They discounted him his whole time at Texas. And he was just never – he was around so many great players.
Yeah.
But don't ever – I mean, I think if his career at Texas taught us anything, it's don't count out David Bender because that guy just has a knack of making plays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with that. And every time he was in there, he made plays too. And
he's a guy that could help you on special teams as well.
Yep. No, I agree with you. And like I said, they look like they're rebuilding the defense for the Tennessee Titans. So I don't know about him making the game day roster, but I definitely think he's a guy that can end up making the practice squad for the Titans and being kind of developmental project for the Tennessee Titans. So there you go. That's Pro Football Focus. They did list 2 Longhorns as possible impact players as undrafted free agents. All right, Coach, before we get done here, I got a couple of other things I want to ask you about just real quickly. There's a piece coming out. Seth Wickersham is doing a very kind of deep expose. He's doing an article about quarterbacks. I think he's writing a book about quarterbacks as well. And recently he spoke with Caleb Williams, and Caleb Williams' time with the Bears. He was giving some examples of the ineptitude, I guess you could say, of the Chicago Bears prior to hiring the new coach, Ben Johnson, and how tough it was in his first year as a rookie, with that regime. And one of the examples that he gave, apparently, that's getting a lot of fodder, a lot of headlines, is that he claimed that there are times when nobody was there to watch film with him and break down film. He said at times, Williams said he would watch film alone with no instruction or guidance from the coaches. He said, no one tells me what to watch. He told his dad, I just turn it on. And they go into some detail about the lack of instruction, just kind of a lack of development overall. But this is something we've talked about on the show. Now, so aside from that, go read the article. It's on ESPN. Seth Wickersham is writing a book about Caleb Williams leading up to the draft. Matter of fact, in the article, they talk about talking to the Manning family. Caleb Williams' dad says that basically he didn't want his son to get drafted by the Bears. So that's the place where quarterbacks go to die. And he said he actually sought advice from the Manning's coach because like Eli, he wanted to figure out some way to circumvent the Bears having the top pick, and so he could go to another team, maybe force his way onto another team. John Elway style, Eli Manning style, Deion Sanders style, that kind of thing. It didn't work out. He ended up getting drafted by the Bears. So they mentioned the Mannings in this article, by the way. And I'm sure Seth Wickersham has probably got an example of the Mannings in his new book talking about quarterbacks. But I digress. Point is, a lot of the article is shining a light on the lack of development and the lack of developmental methods, right? That the Bears implemented with a new quarterback in Caleb Williams, right? They just didn't focus on development. And I think Ben Johnson is going to change all that. But it's something that we've talked about, and I think it's a big part of why we can be confident that that Arch Manning is going to stay in school another year. Because the Mannings know the NFL is not a developmental league. I think now the Bears may be the most extreme example of it. But the NFL, in a lot of ways, they don't focus on developing quarterbacks. We know that now. We know that looking at the draft. You know that looking at how quickly they give up on rookie quarterbacks. They're not interested in developing you. They want quarterbacks coming to the league pretty much, for the most part, ready to go. That's probably a flawed logic, and it's probably doing a disservice to young QBs. But that is the NFL right now. And I think that's what hurt Quinn, because he's a developmental quarterback. That's why he dropped. And I think that's also why the Manning family wants Arch to stay in school for multiple years and be developed, because they know the NFL doesn't focus on that.
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts on that. First of all, you have to think the Chicago Bear, the administration there, in the front office have to be concerned about that type of rhetoric getting out about their coaching staff, true or not. I mean, I just think that there's a certain amount of professionalism as an NFL player you have to have. And if any player on your quarterback has to be loyal to the program, it's the quarterback, you know. And so it's a turnoff to the fans, it's a turnoff to the season ticket holders, you know, it's a turnoff to the teammates. What good does that do to go out and say that, even if you're just trying to sell a book? And maybe that's what he's trying to do. You know, I don't know. But, you know, my two thoughts again are, does it make the front office of the Bears and their coaching staff, you know, take a look in the mirror and say, is any of this stuff true or valid, or are we just going to blow it off on a rookie that didn't have this year that he thought he was going to have or thought he should have? And so he's stabbing his team and his coaching staff in the back and not taking blame for his lack of development. But I mean, you know, when you look at the amount of time that Peyton Manning and, you know, the great quarterbacks that you've seen through the history of the NFL, there's one thing that they all had in common, and that is you couldn't get them out of the film room. And they were smart enough, and I'm not saying smart enough, but they were driven enough, no matter what, I'm going to make myself ready to play, whether I got a coach in here with me or not. Now, as a rookie, obviously, it's very important to have a coach there to help you develop, to know what you want him looking for, if there is some truth in that. But, again, I don't think it's a good look for him, and it's not a good look for when that contract comes up, other teams signing him. You know, what's he going to say about us if he's not successful? You know, I don't know that. Obviously, the NFL teams are not nearly as worried about the perception as they are in college, because it can really hurt your recruiting in college. You know, really, I don't think the Bears are probably worried about their ticket sales too much. I don't know, but it does say a lot about, I think, his lack of loyalty and leadership to make those type of comments, you know, about his club. And it's not a good look for the Bears either.
I agree on that. You're probably talking too much. Yeah, as you know, you don't want to, you know, you don't want to air the dirty laundry, right? You know,
and I'm telling you, unless your dad is a Manning, nobody really wants to hear a dad talking too much. You know, people want to know what the Mannings have to say, but Caleb Williams and his dad, they're digging himself in a hole that he's going to have to play himself out of. That's the only way he can do it, is play himself out of this hole that whatever put him there, whether it was the coaching staff or whatever, keep that between you and the coaching staff. But the only way out of it is to play his way out of it, or he's not going to be a high commodity when it comes time, you know, for him to get out of his when his contract rolls up to re-sign. It's this is going to be a very important year for him. And I just want to ask you this: did the Bears make any changes offensively with their staff? I don't know that.
Yeah, they hired Ben Johnson, the Detroit Lions. So they got he's a, you know, offensive minded guy, QB guy. So they hired, you know.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So that's probably why it also is coming out, because I think even maybe the Bears, you know, the organization, they want a scapegoat for all the, you know, bad decisions. And like,
yeah, you're right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
All those bad decisions and the losses and the bad draft picks, that was all Eberflus and that guy. So I think maybe there's a little scapegoating going on here too. But you're right, Coach. Usually if you're a quarterback, you want to keep all that, you know, behind the scenes, because you don't want to put the family business out there, but it is out there. But my point, and kind of getting back to it, was ultimately, you know, it's another example why the NFL is not a developmental league for quarterbacks, right? We can talk about the draft. We can talk about, I mean, that 2024 draft for quarterbacks, not this year's, but 2024. Remember, you had 6 first-round quarterbacks, and then you didn't have another quarterback drafted to the 5th round.
Yeah, it's sink or swim. Sink or swim.
Exactly. That's exactly what the NFL is.
Shelf life
Yeah. They're not going to invest in you developing. This year, you had 3 quarterbacks drafted in the first 2 rounds. And then I believe you ended up with 8 drafted in the last 3 rounds. So you had 3 in the first 2 and 8 in the last 3. Like that's because they are not picking developmental quarterbacks in the middle rounds anymore. Those guys are dropping. Their value is dropping in terms of where they're going to draft them. And that's just, I don't know why, but the NFL, that's just what they've decided is the value of a developmental prospect at the quarterback position. All right. And that's why Arch, I think, is going to stay multiple years at Texas, because he's going to stay here where they do value development. And we know Sark is big on that. All right, real quick, before we get out of this, thank our sponsors one more time. Thank our friends over at Von Lane, vonlane.com. Use that code OTF25 to get $20 off your first trip with Von Lane. Thank you as well to Flat Creek, flatcreekestate.com. And thank you to South Point Dodge, southpointdodge.com as well. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes. He's the real MVP. Twisting and tweaking it out. Nobody does it better. Thank you, Coach. We appreciate the wisdom and levity as always. Thank you to CJ, who dropped in on us from Louisiana. So he's out there doing the hard work for the Owen Texas football family. We appreciate him. You can find more updates from CJ at OwenTexasFootball.com. But tomorrow we'll be back with Coffee and Football at 8:15. I believe, actually, I'm going to be on Coffee and Football tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, in for Bobby. I believe that's going to be the case. So me and Jerry will be having fun at 8:15. We also have a 1 p.m. live stream tomorrow as well, and we'll get you caught up with all the updates and headlines from Longhorn football and Longhorn sports. But in the meantime, for Coach and for Matthew, I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Until next time, hook 'em horns.